Hello there, my name is David Kempster. I'm Marketing Director here at Groundsure, and in this video I'm going to be answering some of the internet's pressing questions about flooding and flood risk. Can you get a mortgage on a flood risk property? Well, in the majority of cases, getting a mortgage in a flood risk area is no problem at all. First of all, check buildings insurance is available for the property, as this can be a condition of getting a mortgage. If getting a mortgage is proving difficult, first off, speak to a mortgage broker who specialises in flood risk. They often have access to mortgage products that aren't available on the open market. They may also be able to assist with getting you insurance. If you declined a mortgage, first of all, before applying with a new lender, you need to understand fully why you were declined. This means ensuring the rejection was completely due to flood risk and no other factors were at play. Remember that when you apply for a mortgage, it impacts your credit rating, so reapplying in a short space of time can have negative impacts. Can I get insurance in a flood zone? Insurers account for the risk rating in their premiums. Our flood risk reports also show the insurability of the property. Some properties are in such extreme risk of flooding that they're covered by a scheme that's called Flood Re. This is a reinsurance scheme, and that protects the most vulnerable properties that would normally not get insurance. But this tapers away in 2039, so that means you'll need to have demonstrated that by then you'll have fitted flood resilience measures to reduce the risk of flood damage to your property. If you're just outside of Flood Re's coverage, but still at significant risk, like many properties are, there may be no safety net at all. So this means you may not get cover for flood risk, or the premiums, or the excess may be prohibitive. So don't forget, if you can't obtain insurance, it can significantly affect your ability to obtain a mortgage. How do you check if a property is in a flood risk area? Well, the best way is to find out if a property is at risk of flooding is to ensure that your solicitor or conveyancer undertakes a search as part of the property buying process. Ensure that the search that they're buying in does include full flood data as standard. All of Groundshore's environmental reports do include flood data as standard. Whilst there are free resources available, such as the Environment Agency's flood risk map, we'd always recommend seeking professional advice, particularly during the home buying process. How does flood risk affect insurance? The availability of affordable insurance can be affected by flood risk, but there are a few steps that can be taken. Insurers have access to their flood risk data, and each insurer has their own risk appetite. So the availability of insurance does vary between providers. Regardless of the flood risk, we would always advise obtaining an insurance policy which does include flood damage, and in the first instance, use a comparison site to obtain a variety of quotes. If the property is at risk of flooding, insurance may be available through the Flood Re scheme, which is that specialist scheme that I mentioned earlier designed to cover the properties at risk. Secondly, find a broker that specialises in properties that are difficult to insure. The British Insurance Brokers Association can be a good place to start for that. And finally, the National Flood Forum may be able to advise. They're a charity that's designed to help, support and represent people at risk of flooding. When do I need a flood risk report when buying a house? Well, as early as possible in the transaction. Your solicitor or conveyancer will usually obtain a pack of searches once you've instructed them. We recommend a product which includes flood risk as standard, so no additional searches are necessary. Even if the property is not near a sea or a river, it can still be impacted by other sources of flooding, like groundwater flooding, for example, and also surface water flooding. Where can you find out if a property has flooded? Well, major floods are recorded by the Environment Agency and will be included in all Groundsure environmental searches. The seller also has a responsibility for completing the TA6 property information form to the best of their knowledge. The TA6 is the form to give the prospective buyer detailed information about the property and contains a question on if the property has been affected by flooding. Whilst inaccurate information could lead to a compensation claim, the UK conveyancing process works on the basis of caveat emptor, buyer beware. So it's always worth recommending that you make your own thorough and independent inquiries. This could be through talking with local residents and with neighbours, or even the local authority. Who does a flood risk assessment? So Groundsure provides home buyers and business owners with flood risk assessments as part of our key environmental searches. These not only look at past flood extents and the degree of protection that comes from existing flood defences, but they will also look ahead at not only the planned defences, but the impact that climate change will inevitably have going forward. With global warming comes more moisture in the atmosphere, and that means more rain and more storms. Properties close to rivers and even those smaller streams that you may have not really taken account of in the past are likely to have changes in their flows and their extents. Flood maps are being redrawn, and our climate index analysis, which is included automatically in our main reports, now looks up to 30 years ahead on an individual property basis.